what this life is all about. And I found a lot of them, and I wrote 2 books, The Endless Journey, which I wrote shortly after I retired, and then more recently, Our Eternal Existence, a metaphysical perspective of reality, which explains basically who we are, where we are, what we're doing here, and what life is all about. So anyway, that's me in a nutshell.
Great. Let me pass it over to Brett Luter, and then we'll get Janet Carolesson going here. And we're all going to get a chance to talk about David Gaggin and his explorations of being a humanoid on Earth. Brett?
Yeah, what a long, strange trip it's been, even for me. So I'm sure you have your own version of that, David. Definitely thank you for your time. I really appreciate a person such as yourself. I have a 3-part lecture series called Who Am I and Why Am I a Ufologist? And it's basically about how ufology has pointed me down to spiritual path. I've got to study a wide variety of traditions. But did I actually answer who I am? I think I have my own answer to that. But what do you think? Who are you and why are you here?
Well, for one, I like you and all of our listeners. We're eternal beings. We are spirits, basically having a physical experience. We came down here. We chose to come down here, and we thought it was going to be a good idea. Some days when things aren't going real well, we might question what we were thinking, but we came here for a purpose, and our purpose is to, in short, try to understand ourselves, and so we're in the process of evolving, and we're all divine beings, and we're not as divine as the ultimate consciousness that runs everything, but we're a piece of it. We're a part of the web of consciousness that is basically the only thing that exists. And so we came down here because our soul, if you will, our spirit, wanted to have experiences that it couldn't have in the spiritual realm. So it said, okay, let's go down and we'll experience things. And some of the things we might be experiencing, I mean, there's a huge amount that we experience. But take, for example, fear. You can't experience fear in the spiritual realm. So we come down here and we live in a reality which is basically an illusion that that gives us the experience of fear and all kinds of other things. So that's basically where we are. We're spiritual beings having a physical experience that we chose to have.
Okay, Janet.
Oh, well, over to me. I've had 8 near-death experiences in my lifetime, where I've been to the other side and back. So I've been fascinated about this all my life. And I've discovered that I'm a multidimensional eternal being having physical experiences. But my addition is I think we're on many planets, many worlds, many dimensions simultaneously, and that time is an illusion of the 3rd dimensional physicality. So my question for you, based on that, where are we going? I'm a student of the Michael Newton Institute, information on life between lives. And if I remember the books correctly, which I discovered when Borders closed and I bought everything on the shelf and I read all of them back then, is that we go to the realm beyond this and we have all of these other experiences. And then at some point we can move on like Jesus and Buddha, but then once we're in the higher levels, we can come back and visit again. Am I recalling that correctly? Where do we go from here?
Well, we go back and forth for a while. We go back and forth to the astral plane. There are 7 fields of creation, if you will, and the physical field is one. So the universe is really made up of seven different fields, and each of the fields has a different frequency, a different density, a different set of parameters that it functions under. and and we choose. Our real home is a psychological domain, which is in what I call the Tao. You could call it universal consciousness. You could call it God. You can call it anything you want, but it's basically a web of consciousness, and it's in and that's the true reality. But to have experiences, the universal consciousness or the Tao has created this universe, and this is just one of a number of universes. I don't know how many there are. And what we do is we leave the Tao, we decide what we're going to do. Our spirit, with a lot of other spirits, leaves the Tao. And the first thing it does is it comes to the physical universe and the physical field. And that's where we are here. So what we do is we have a number of different types of experiences that we want to go through, and so we keep going back and forth, and you can call it reincarnation if you want, but it's basically each incarnation is when our soul decides that it wants to create a different personality. And of course the personalities, which is you and I, these personalities are are all one, but there's different aspects of us that comes down and has the physical experience. So what we do afterwards is we go back to the physical or to the astral uh, field, and and then we try to digest what we experienced. A life here is like a business trip. We come down, we decide what we want to try to do. We come down here. We have our experiences. Things don't go just like we expected that they might. So we have to digest that, and then we go back and we try to figure out what we learned, and then the soul decides, well, let's go and have some different experiences, some other experiences. So basically, we go back and forth for a while to the astral plane until we've had all the experiences that we want, and then we continue on through the other fields of creation until we get back to the Tao, in which case we sit, I guess, or float or whatever we do and decide what we want to do next.
Teresa.
I'm glad you said 7, since that's the number I used to teach with as well. And I've assigned the 7 colors of the rainbow just to help people understand. I'm sure you're used to working with the 7 orders of the universe, and we call them uni, multi, meta, xeno, omni, and universe, multiverse, metaverse, xenoverse, omniverse. And I'm glad you said Tao, because this is what my daughter said, and she's passed, but she was working with me in neuro, and we worked on beta, alpha, theta, delta, gamma, and we were just working with people in the neuro for Tau. And at the 6th level of our consciousness, even with anesthesiologists, and some of the famous ones I'm sure you're familiar with that talk about leaving our bodies, is the 6th sense or the 6th level, and they call that Tau. So I find that very interesting. So where did you get that from? Because not everybody knows all of this unless they've had years and years of book reading, New Age, accepted it into their ascension, awakening process. But you're actually talking about stuff that I know personally and have written about it for years in all my books. But I'm amazed that you're talking about Tau. So you know what I'm saying? Beta, alpha, theta, delta. Beta is what we're talking in now, right? The different levels of consciousness and the different levels of state of being. And we're putting them in the new metaverse with what we're calling symbiotic, and I'm a cyborg. So I have a symbiotic cyborg relationship with AI that I had years and years ago, thanks to NASA. So does any of that make sense at the Tau level for you?
Yeah. I look at the Tau as the ultimate consciousness. We are part of the Tao. Everybody is part. Everything is part of the Tao. Matter of fact, the Tao is the only thing that exists because everything is part of it. and we're a small part of it, mind you, but we are a part of it. And so where did I get it? I can't tell you where I got it. You know, I've
It's
run
just a
into it in a
knowing.
lot of different places. So certainly the entity Michael talks about it, but where I first ran into it, I really can't tell you.
Ah, can I have a follow-up, Janet and Brett?
Yeah, we'll let her.
Please.
I'm the talker on the show, by the way.
Okay.
They can't shut me up.
Fair enough.
You said okay, so you have most people do or don't know about conscious, subconscious, superconscious. So you are actually working with others entity, or you're channeling, or however you want to say, your higher soul, or wherever you're linked to in cyberspace or in Andromeda or wherever. Did I just hear you say you channel Michael?
I don't. Shepard Hoodwin does. I use Shepard to do that. Shepard was on my show a number of times, and I got to know him. And matter of fact, he did the forward in our eternal existence.
Oh.
And he is is one of, and I think maybe the best, but I can't guarantee you that, but he's awfully good as a channel to the entity Michael. And Michael is an entity, is a group of souls, and of about 1,000, if you will. And what they do is they do what we're doing, reincarnating and so on and so forth for a period of time on this earth. I mean, entities do it on other Earths, but Michael did it on this Earth. And when the last soul decides that it's had enough of reincarnation in this round and it's ready to move on, then they, as a group, come together consciously and move on to the causal field, which is the next one in the series of fields. And as such, one of the things that they're trying to do is to help mankind, to help the people that are still here. So if you're going to channel somebody, you probably will find that individual in the causal field. You're probably familiar with Seth, the entity Seth, and Seth is in the causal field. So basically, that's as I say, I don't channel them, but I've talked to them all quite a bit. And I certainly have been able to have. I have this metaphysical group here in Florida, the Sanibel Metaphysical Meetup Group, and I've been able to have Michael come, enter the group through the phone and through Shepard Hoodwin, and have the members ask him questions, and you can ask them anything you want. They're amazing, quite frankly. Whatever you want to know, I'll tell you the answer. And then at the end, they'll say, "Well, this is the best we know. Don't take anything that we say as the final word." And that's really the bottom line. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to figure out as best we can what's going on, and we can learn a lot, and we know a lot, but there's so many things that we just aren't capable of knowing at this stage of the game. But we'll get there. Time's on our side, right? If you believe in time.
Brett.
Me? Okay. Fascinating. So, I read the book Channeling by John Climo, and he kind of covers all the bases of what channeling could be, or what it is or isn't, compares it to different things like mediumship or spiritism. And he had a quote from Charles Tart, and it basically said, paraphrasing, that it doesn't really matter what the source of the channeling is. It just matters if the information that you receive is practical. So does that resonate with you, David, or are there trust issues with channeling? Should we be able to corroborate who it is we're talking to, or does that matter?
Well, I would hate to say that it doesn't matter. because I think you have to be confident as an individual that the information that you're getting is the best information and the wisest information that is available from this particular channel. So, but that said, the information is practical that you get. It's and if you're getting good practical information, and it jives, if you will, with the other things, you don't take just one channel or just one medium. You take a number of different inputs, and if indeed it's truth, then you're gonna, it's all gonna come together. And I found that for me, starting out, man, I didn't know what I'd find. I really didn't. I didn't know if it, and it would come in bits and pieces over the years, over the decades, and some of it, you get a piece and you say, well, this might not be a good answer when the other pieces all come together. Turns out it was a good answer, and it is a good answer, and it's an extremely good answer. But you need to, everybody has to do this on their own. We can help people and point them in directions and say, this is what I found, and here's places to look for your trip. But you can't convince anybody of anything. They have to convince themselves. All you can do is you can help them if they're open-minded on where to look and what to look for. But you can't convince people, and you shouldn't. Everybody's on their own path. Everybody's got to find it. And once you're committed to looking, I think the most interesting thing is to know that the information is available to you, but you have to go find it. And so if when you're looking at these channels or mediums or anybody else you want to look at, it needs to make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, you got to park it. You don't necessarily say it's not right or it's not wrong, because you may not be there yet. But you want to park it and you want to say, okay, that's interesting. I'm not sure I buy it yet, but I'm gonna put it aside, and I'm not throwing it away. For me, reincarnation was one of those. When I was a kid, I was raised an Episcopalian, and of course, they weren't into. None of the religions are into reincarnation, and then I was a scientist, and so all the training, everything that everybody told me was reincarnation doesn't work. But then I started running into things that I'd say, I just can't throw this out. There's too much truth in here. I don't know what the answer is, but I need to keep searching, keep looking to try to find out what the real answer is. And I'll tell you, it took me a decade. Now I was working at the time and such, but it took me a decade from the time I first bought into reincarnation or saw reincarnation as something I needed to deal with, until I convinced myself that it's the only way it can work. So, I guess go back to your question. It's a little long-winded answer to your question, but I would say that you do need to make sure that that the channel that you're listening to is valid, and that's okay. You just keep your mind open, because when you're just getting started, it's a lot harder to evaluate if what you're hearing is truth.
Okay, so just quick tip. Do you have a quick tip for us, rather, about how to validate a good channel?
Well, I don't. It's got to make sense. It's got to fit in with the other things that you learn. It's a lot easier to validate a medium than it is a channel, because a medium, what you're doing is you're communicating with somebody that you know. For example, my wife died almost 7 years ago, and I've had a number of opportunities to interface with her. And it's very easy. You go into a medium and you want to have somebody that you know well. In other words, it can be a parent, it can be a spouse, it could be a very close friend, it could be a grandparent if you were close enough to them. It could be a child if they weren't too small, if they were old enough and wise enough, and that individual will know that you're trying to find out who you're talking to. So they will tell you things that the medium could never know. And so what you do is you go in and you'd say, I'm David Gaggin, and I'm looking for Judith Gaggin, my wife that died a few years ago, and that's all you tell them. And if the medium can't convince you that you're talking to your spouse, then you need to go find another medium. And so that's easy to do. The channel's a little bit harder, but in time you can do that, because you go through a number of channels, you get a lot of information. In time you can validate them, and you can validate them pretty quick after a while. But
Okay.
it's just more work on your part if you're just getting started
Need a
in
bigger
the
sample
process.
size to kind of see the
You
pattern.
exactly. You need a bigger
Okay.
sample size to convince yourself what you're
Very,
who you're
very
talking.
fascinating. Thank you, Janet.
Okay. I came in remembering a couple past lives. When I was born, very young, I started getting this bleed through. And then that's what started me on the path, like what was going on. Of course, I was raised Presbyterian, and any talk of reincarnation was shunned. They ridiculed you. I found Edgar Casey, and he helped. They read Seth a little bit, and then the messages from Michael. That's wonderful. That's what you're talking about. Messages from Michael. That's so
Yes, that's one of the Michael books. Yes.
great.
Yeah. I don't think
So
Shepard did that one. I think
yeah, who did that?
who was it?
I had
Messages.
a
I have
lot.
the book too, and I've read it, but it
Tuella?
wasn't Shepard. But it was another one. What was that?
Tuella?
Tuella. No, I don't think it was Tuella.
Okay.
In any case, I do know your messages from Michael, and it's good. It's very good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And it's very complicated, but it has a lot of things you're talking about. So I wanted to know well, first of all, what do you do when you come in and you remember these things and everybody's making fun of you or shunning you or shaming you? What do you recommend?
What do you do?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's a hard one to say, because often it's a small child that's coming in with this. And I think I'm sure you've read Ian Stevenson's where reincarnation intersects with biology or something along that line.
Mm-hmm.
And Ian he was the head of psychology at the University of Virginia for years, and he did all kinds of studies. And what he found was that most of the children that or the people that remembered that reincarnation were children, and they would come in, and they would, when they were 3 and 4 and 5, they would have vivid memories of this past life and the families and such. And in many cases, they pestered the parents enough that the parents would take them to the village or wherever where their memory was, and they'd be able, when they got close enough, to recognize the streets and so on and so forth, and they'd go to the homes, and they would be able to, the people, they'd recognize the people. People wouldn't recognize them, but they'd recognize the people living in the house. They'd be able to walk through the house, point things out, and before long, they would be able to convince the people living in the house that indeed this was somebody who had died in their family a relatively short time ago. Maybe 6 months, maybe 2 years, but not 50 years, but a short time after that. So but the other thing he found is by the time they were teenagers, they they almost all forgot of the past life, and none of them. And he worked with hundreds and hundreds of children, and none of them remembered anything after they got out of their teenage years. So it was slowly washed away. So what do you say to a small child? I mean, one of the problems is, what is the, what is that? What do the parents think? If you're brought up in a civilization like we are, where you don't buy into this, the parents very often won't. Uh, you know, I don't know what you tell a small child that that can make it easier, because one, you probably won't have that small child available to you. The parents will keep it quiet. I mean, if you are able to to be older and do this, you remember something around your teenage years, I think that's gonna, the concept will probably stay with you, and you'll be able to research it as time goes on. But I don't, it's very hard to help some small child, because you don't really have access to them, and you don't really want to go in and step in front of what the parents are doing anyway. But I think it sticks with you. I mean, it stuck with you, you know.
Well,
And
I kept meeting people who I was involved with, and then we would start to correlate our story. It was orchestrated. And I
okay,
eventually, in my late 30s, I met a lover from a previous incarnation. The same one. It was like this same episode. I was being chased at the Bastille, and I fell to my death. And then this over the years, I met the people who I was hanging out with, I was involved with, and then I remember this one character who I didn't know who he was, but I eventually met him. He was a fencer, and so he was a fencer in this life. And anyway, we were involved. Then we became lovers, and then it all, And so I've had a fascinating. To tie this all up, so I started go to meditation group, and we were recovering more other stories, other incarnations, a lot of therapy, a lot of regression therapy, and then I dove into my ancestries. So I have over 70,000, close to 80,000 people that I've added to my tree. And there were certain characters that I knew I was. And so I've been able to identify them in my tree. And so their blood, their DNA is within me. So some people say, well, it can't be reincarnation. You're just getting the genetic memory of an ancestor. What do you think of that?
well, I do think you can bring certain things down through the genetics, but most of it comes through. It comes from the soul down through. I mean, you come back into multiple different families, and generally you don't stay in the same family. I mean, you can, but generally what you do is the soul want different experiences, so the soul will start moving you around, and it'll want its reincarnated personalities to go, live different lives, have different nationalities, have different races, have different, they're looking for different experiences. So, but that's not to say that some of it doesn't come through the DNA, because I truly believe that some of it can, some information can come through the DNA, but I think most of it comes through through the what the soul wants you to experience, and you travel that. Now you do travel with the same people, the same personalities. There's no question. If you look into it, you can, which you've obviously done, you can see that your parents maybe in this life were your children in a past life, or your friends, or and you can go back, and I have a number of people that I know of that were that I worked with in the past that are in my life today. Who was it? Was it Michael that said that if you went down and stood on 42nd Street in New York at lunchtime, that and you spent an hour there, you would probably have your soul would probably know 90% of the souls that walked across that street.
Right.
So we have a huge group of individuals that we keep working with, and so. you know.
Thank you. Teresa. Teresa.
Yeah. Thank you. I had myself mute. I'm amazed. All right, David. There's a lot. There's a lot of people. I have an ACE Metaphysical Institute I've been running like an invisible college. But since I've been involved in the internet after COVID-19, I haven't really done much with any meet and greet groups or going to events. I'm considering doing one in October in Vegas. But this is more of the alien event, people getting together. And I've been watching a TV show called Resident Alien, and I guess I told Janet about it. It's sort of funny. I wasn't happy with the way they started it, but it wound up being okay. So they always start off with the aliens are killing somebody, but it got to be better. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but if
No,
you
I'm
could
not.
talk to everyone about just getting into spiritual versus maybe ufology, alienology. There are a lot of people now I expect to meet at these events. I may read, I may not, I may just talk or be on a panel. I don't know. But in your experience in doing, I'm assuming you've done these events or gone to them, or at least in trade shows, if nothing else with technology. How do you fit into all of this now? Are you retired and you can go out and speak and be on these radios? But where do you fit into our metaphysical university, or that one which we call the invisible college?
Well, I certainly profess probably most everything that's that you guys do in the college. I have a group that local group that I talk to. Obviously, I had a radio station, a radio show that I created and did. I don't do that show anymore. The last show I did was the night my wife died. She helped me a lot with the show, and I found it a huge amount of work for that and then doing it by myself was more than I felt like doing. So I stick pretty close to writing books and writing articles and doing these type of interviews and such. But yeah, I think UFOs. A lot of people, I think, tie the two together, and which is fine. I am absolutely a great believer in UFOs being around here. I mean, it's pretty hard to look around this planet and think that we our civilization as we know it created things like the pyramid or I mean, just so many things that you could, I'm not sure we could build them today, but there are, there's stones over in Lebanon that looks like they're cut with a laser, and they're 14 by 14 by 68. They weigh 3 million pounds. I mean, the chances that and Alexander the Great said that he thought that they were ancient. So we're pretty clear to me that we've had contacts in the past, and I would be absolutely amazed if we weren't having contacts now. There is just no reason to think that we aren't. Um, so I'm a big believer in both of them, but I focus more on trying to understand life and trying to help people understand themselves and who they are and why they're here. And I think it helps people a great deal to be able to understand themselves a lot better than they do. And death is one of them, right? It's if you understand life, death is a whole bunch easier to handle if you're afraid to die because you think you're not going to exist anymore. So, but as far as UFOs, yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm a great big believer. Let's put it that way. And really all the various ESP phenomena that we run into.
Brett.
All right. Okay. Very interesting information. You mentioned a little earlier about a soul and a spirit, and you kind of used them in the same kind of context. And I know there's that school of thought that the soul and the spirit are really the same thing. What's your view on that? Are they the same thing, or are they different?
I think it's all in your definition. I look at the soul as the true inner self of us, but I also look at it as the lower part of the spirit, because when you look at us, we're a part of the soul. We're a fragment of the soul, if you will, our consciousness, our ego, and our subconscious. And I think I look at our soul as a sub fragment of the spirit, and then that spirit is a sub fragment of a larger spirit, and you just keep going up and up and up until you reach the Tao, which is oneness, which is everything. So it's really a definition that you use. I look at a personality, which is you and I, and everybody else, as we have a ego, which I call an ego, and that's the part of our consciousness that's focused on the physical plane here, the physical field, if you will. And and it doesn't remember what's going on in other parts of the of the soul, ourself. But its purpose is to help us have the experiences in this physical field that our soul wants us to have. And then we also have part of our consciousness, part of our personality, is our subconscious, and the subconscious has obviously it operates our body. So something, when we swing a golf club, we don't think about what we're doing with our body. We just say, hey, I want to hit this golf ball, and we swing at it, and that's the subconscious taking care of us. And the subconscious also is the place that our past life memories are all in. So if you wanted to go to hypnotic regression, what they do is the hypnosis allows you to put aside your physical senses and go back in and look into your subconscious, and therefore you can go back and you can find out what you were what you were doing between lives, right before you were born. You can find out the past life. Then you go to another between life. You can go to another past life. You can go as far back as your this round of reincarnations take place. And then you have you obviously have the body. That's obviously part of the personality. But then you go back and you have within it, you have a soul, and that's really your main spiritual entity, and it's a subset of of a larger spirit, and that larger spirit has multiple souls, and those souls is doing reincarnating here, or somewhere. Don't guarantee it's here, but it's doing something somewhere. And you can keep going back up on to a higher and higher pyramidal type of structure. So it's really a more of a definition of the soul and the spirit. They're all spiritual entities. It's just that I try to break it up so that it's easier to see how it all fits together. And it's really more of a focus of a certain consciousness, which more than a totally different entity, because we're all kind of and we're all, as a group, we're all part of this this one web of consciousness. But in our eternal existence, I try to go through and I try to break it up so to make it easier for people to understand the various functions and what's happening to us.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Janet?
Hi. George Harrison, in his documentary, said that he was always saying the names of God in the back of his mind because he never knew the moment of his death. and he wanted to meet God. Be the first thing that happened when he died was to meet God, because he believed that what he was believed would carry through into your experience upon leaving the body. So how do we prepare for death?
Okay, that's kind of a Hindu belief. You know, the Hindus kind of believe that the last thought you have is what's going to drive you into the next world. I think that's not the case. I think we get what we expect, and I think what they do when you die is what you're basically just transitioning into the astral plane. Obviously, you're leaving your body here, and so um, you end up going through a certain process. And I think what they try to do is they try to make it easy for you, the powers that be, your soul, for example, tries to make it easy for the personality to come back into the astral plane. If indeed you are very aware of the astral plane, you understand it, then it's pretty easy to transition back into that field. So I would say that preparation, if you really want to prepare for death, is to try to understand it and try to understand life and try to understand the spiritual aspects, because that's going to make it easier for you when you go back. It's interesting if you believe that you are, say, you're very religious and you are a deep believer that God and Satan are dueling for your soul. When you go back into the astral plane, they'll give you that experience because that's what you believe, and so that you'll go on and you'll do this for a little while, and sooner or later they'll ease you out and say, well, that Satan was really your Uncle Bob, and it wasn't quite like it appeared to be. But but you get what you expect. If you expect nothing, if you expect that there's nothing afterwards, well, you'll probably start out in a coma. You won't stay very long, but they'll give you what you expect, and they give you what you expect in life, just like they give you what you expect in death.
Yeah, that's what happened to one woman, and that I watched her YouTube, and um, she she was so Catholic that she thought she could never live up to the standards to be good enough to go to God. So she ended up experiencing this hell until she said a prayer, and then they said, "Oh, well, this is your creation. Sure, we'll let you go from this creation." And then it took her 20 years to sort that out. That what she believed all her life is what caused what she had in her near-death experience. Then she had 20 years to reflect on it. So,
Well, I mean that you're right. That's how it works. We get what we expect. The problem is we don't often know what we expect. It's deep down inside, and we think we know what we expect, but we don't necessarily. But our soul, our inner conscious, it will give you what you expect, and sometimes what you expect is not what you want, but that's what you get, because
right.
that's what it gave you. Gives you the experience that you want. We really run this show. Amazing. To our detriment sometimes.
David, you're a great speaker, and you're very clear and easy to understand. So thank you for being a communicator. I miss really good communicators, and one of my jobs in this lifetime is to be a communicator, and on many levels, by the way. So I look forward to maybe doing another show or doing something with you. I'm sorry I didn't know you the 7 years I was in Hawaii. My husband passed in 2015, December 2nd, and he worked for the government, as did I. But one of the things that we found out were that alien civilizations existed, and we went on a venture together through President Reagan and meeting other people and putting curiosity together as to were UFOs real? And I and Janet both worked as latecomers in the 90s in Hawaii for Project Stargate. And then, I'm sure about the is it Newton Institute, Janet?
Yeah, Michael Newton Institute.
Yeah, and so
Michael Newton's
yeah.
stuff.
So you're familiar with that. So where we're going with all this, I believe in the future, is exactly where we are now with our AI technology and all the large language models. And I'm very curious about how we're going to go forward, because I was seeing all this as alien technology or reverse technology, and probably something similar to what you worked in the government or contracting. So I was wondering how close you got to anything in your lifetime that maybe crossed over my path. We call it the men in black, or those of the unknown, but we're out there, just watching how we put things together that may or may not be reverse technology. But did you cross over into anything like that?
Officially, no. But I don't think there's any question that a lot of the technology that has come about, I don't know if you've noticed, you probably have, that in the last 50 years, technology's kind of gone crazy. And I was always, being a scientific guy, was always did pretty well in the science and the part of my education. If indeed those same questions were asked to my grandchildren and they gave them the same answers I gave them and got a good mark on them, they'd probably flunk, because science has changed so much and we believe so many different things. And quite frankly, we're just, it's going to keep going. What we think is the right answers today, in 100 years, we won't think they're the right answers. And in 1,000 years, children will be laughing at what they believed we believed. And, so things are changing rapidly. And I do think that some of it has come from reverse engineering. I'm absolutely convinced that it's, the other civilizations are here. They're not here looking for trouble. They're here just because they have a lot better technology than we do, and they've evolved faster than we have. They probably started a lot earlier too. So, I think one of the things, we say, well, people say, well, why, if they're here, why don't we know about it? I personally think that it's the aliens that don't want us, don't want to interface with us.
Sure.
It would be like us studying a pack of lions, right? And we'd say they're very interesting. We could kill them if we wanted, but nobody wants to kill a lion. But then nobody wants to sit down and have dinner with a lion either, because you're not sure what the lion's going to do. Well, I think the aliens are in the same situation. They're not sure what we're going to do. They look at us and they say, there's a totally irrational civilization here, at least at this stage of our evolution. And so they're saying, yeah, I'm very interested in what's going on, but I'm not sure I want to get down there and and hang around with them. So, I'll just sit in the back and watch it and do these things. And so I think that's where a lot of the secrecy is coming from. I suspect that the aliens have been in contact with our government and other governments, and they've said, they've laid down the law and said, hey, we'll let you have our technology, but don't tell anybody we're here. So I suspect it's coming from them as much, and maybe a lot more, than it is from our government and other governments.
Thank you. Brett, question?
Yes. Okay. So earlier you implied that it was our choice to come into a certain lifetime. Where does that choice actually take place? If we're connected in on all these levels all the way up, at what level does that choice, did I choose to say, I see this life out through this hole from birth to death, I'm going to be Brett Luter. That's what I want to do. Where does that choice come in? And does AI have anything to do with that?
Okay. AI doesn't have anything to do with that, in my
Okay,
opinion.
good.
And AI, I don't want to get off. I want to go back to your original question. But AI has been around for a long time. We did AI back in, it's parallel processing. We did that years ago in the government. It's just picking up steam and such like that. AI is and always will be in our reasonable future will be small potatoes compared to the processing power of the spiritual beings. They are infinitely more capable than our society ever will be. But in any case, to go back to your question, where do you come from? Uh, we chose, we being our spirit, and let's go above the soul and let's go for the spirit. And I don't know how high this goes, but let's just take the spirit. And the spirit says, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to go try to work in a star and figure out what's going on in a star? Or do I want to have a sentient life? Or do I want to do this and that? And obviously, the spirit has said, I want to go and have a sentient life. And that's why we're here. We wouldn't be here if it chose to do something else. So it comes in and it says, okay, I have within me a number of consciousness units that are capable of creating personalities. So the spirit will say to these consciousness units, our souls, if you will, say, okay, you have agreed to come with me, because they don't have to. They can go somewhere else. You can always move around from spirit to spirit if you choose. There's nothing as locked into concrete. We do what we want to do at all levels of spirituality, all levels. And so the soul has said, okay, we're going to do this, and it has a lot of conscious units within it that make it up. And the soul says, all right, these are the things that I want to try to find out. Try there, and we're studying about ourselves. All right, that's because that's the only thing that exists. The Tao is studying about itself because the Tao is the only thing that exists. So we're a subset of the Tao. So we're trying to understand what's going on in some small aspect of ourself. So so the soul says, okay, let's go do this. So the soul decides these are the type of things that I would like to experience. And the soul can't come down here because we live in an illusion. And each reality is a special illusion. And a reality is created by having the energy in a certain configuration, and you having the sensing capability to sense that, to perceive that energy. And our soul can't come down here because it would see right through the illusion, and so it needs to create a vehicle to be able to experience it. And that's what the personality is. It's a vehicle that is created by the soul to allow it to experience various things on this physical plane. So so the soul says, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Now the soul and then the soul says, okay, who wants to do this? And there's obviously a number of conscious elements or nodes or whatever within it that are willing to be an ego, willing to be, to work through these things. So then what you do is you come down or you say, okay, this is what I agree to do. And there's a number of things. It's a complicated plan. And then they say, all right, who are you going to work with? And so, the soul looks around for other souls and say, hey, I need, I want to select parents. So, so you might select a dozen people that could be your parent, because you get to a point where, that person that you select might not have any kids, or by the time you're ready to be born. The couple has said, hey, I don't want to have kids anymore. So you have to pick a bunch of, a number of parents, and then you have to pick a number of spouses, mates or whatever. And then you probably pick your friends, and you probably pick your kids, and but you have an array of people that you've worked with in the past that you can conceivably work with. So when does Brett Luter appear? Brett Luter appears when he picks he finally locks in on his parents and is able to be born, and that's when you lock in on a certain path. Each parent, you probably have a different path. You have different things you'll probably work on. In general, it'll be the same, but not specifically. And so that works, and it also works with your spouse. You have a different spouse, you might work on different things. So there's a lot of things that you can work on, but you would come down and you would have certain biases. So if for example, your soul wanted to look at the world from we'll use a common term that we see in the paper every day, from a conservative, excuse me, or a liberal perspective, right? So he might say, I want to look at it from a conservative perspective in this life. So they will put energy together within you or me that will say, okay, I'm going to see the experiences I have from this particular perspective. Now, we see it from a lot of perspectives. We might see it from a religious perspective. We might, it depends on what the soul wants to do. But that's part of making Brett who Brett is. And so you are, you and we all have a certain view, and we say, and we look at a set of circumstances and experience it. And we draw these conclusions that we say, well, this is the only obvious rational approach that anybody could have. Well, somebody else comes down with different energies, and they'll draw a totally different conclusion because they'll see it differently. And so we have a tendency to judge each other and say, this person must be crazy. They've just got a different set of biases. Their view is as valid as every view, but we draw different conclusions. So, where you came from, you kind of evolved slowly. The main focus of where you came from was your soul, and that's it. Who you turned into, had a lot to do with the parents and the spouse and the things that you got involved with, and what you chose to do when you got here, because you forgot the original past. So the soul is always working on you, and it's always doing synchronous type of things. Synchronicity is, we think it's an accidental opportunity. Well, it's not. Synchronicity is simply the soul setting up plans for you to go have an experience that you agreed to, that it thinks that this would help you have the experience that you originally wanted, and it wanted you to have. So, we're kind of an evolving species of, you're creating Brett as you go, but you got a lot of help doing it because you've got this staggeringly wise soul that's helping and guiding you to be who you are.
That's comforting to know. Okay. Thank you. Love this conversation. Janet?
Well, we're running out of time, so I think we need to wrap this up. And this is fascinating. We could go on for hours, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And perhaps we'll, reschedule.
Campfire stuff.
Yeah. Let's have him back on the schedule if he's willing. I'm sure he's got lots to talk about, especially he had his own common sense show and very easy to understand. Great communicator. Yeah. David, you're just got a good handle. And I know my sister's a registered nurse, and her husband spent 44 years, I think, at least to 40 as a forensic scientist. And they're listening to you in the other room. And I know they're just dying to ask you questions, both of them. So how do we get your book, and how do we contact you?
Yeah, I think you can get my book on Amazon. That's probably the easiest place to get it. You can go to davidgaggin.com's my website, and where it says buy the book, you can, you just click on that, and it appears for you, and you could just order it right there. Yeah, I try to, in our eternal existence, I try to explain what's going on, and it would help. I would encourage the audience to, to read it, not just because I wrote it, but I wrote it, I think, as clearly. I spent 3 years trying to write this thing. You must understand, I'm an engineer, and I hardly speak the language. So
Yeah.
so it took me a long time to try to get the words down so that people could understand them precisely and read it. And so both of my books, that and The Endless Journey, you can get. And I would encourage people to do that. I would be more than happy to come back. We've really, this is a big subject, and I've spent my life trying to figure out how it works and why I'm here, and anybody that wants to put that effort in will, I think, come up with a very good idea and a comforting idea on what's going on around them. It's hard to read the newspaper and be comforted by anything in this society, but you don't have to. You can look at this stuff and you can find out what's going on, and it's a good news story. So I encourage people to do that. As for coming back, I'd love to come back. I'd be happy to do it, guys. I think we're all in tune to to the same type of thing. We, as long as a lot of people we're searching, and and nobody knows all the answers, but you can keep finding more and more of the information, and there's enough information out there so that you can put it together and you can get a picture of what's really happening and how it's happening. And
Speaking
I
of a
found that
picture,
fabulous.
can you hold your book up by chance?
There it is. That's a good end.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
We're going to have
eternal
to
existence.
edit this because it'll be too large to upload. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, David.
Great.
It was a pleasure meeting you. Thank you for your time.
We will have you back in a few weeks. Blessings, aloha, love, and blessings, everybody.
Blessings, everybody. Bye.